Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're opening up a kind of treasure chest, but maybe not in the way you'd expect. We're not just looking for the big appraisal numbers.
No, not at all.
We are taking a full, really glorious plunge into one of the most enduring, fascinating, and, let's be honest, most lucrative television concepts ever created. Antiques Roadshow.
Yeah, it's definitely more than just a TV show now, isn't it? It's become a cultural phenomenon, a machine, really, running strong into its 29th season now.
29th. That's incredible.
It is, and fundamentally, the show is this massive field production unit. It crisscrosses the whole country, tracking down not just, dollar signs, but the deep and often really poignant human stories that are woven into these old artifacts.
That's exactly our mission today.
Right.
We want to be your guide sort of through the whole operation, unpacking the mechanics of this logistical beast, analyzing how exactly value gets determined.
Which is tricky.
Right, and tracking the volatile market for these rare and ancient artifacts, and uncovering why, ultimately, that emotional connection to some dusty old thing always seems to trump the potential fortune.
And that emotional connection, that resonance, that's absolutely the bedrock of the show's success. It's what keeps those huge crowds coming back year after year. The executive producer, Marcia Bemko, she states it very clearly, unequivocally really, that for the whole production team, story is king.
Story is king.
Yeah, and she's noted that even when people get genuinely life-changing appraisals, say $500,000 for a painting, they often just refuse to sell it.
Really? Even $500,000?
Often, yes, because the item, it belongs to their family history, and
Yeah.
that bond is, for many people, it's simply unbreakable. It's not about the money at that point.
Wow. Okay, the scale required to actually generate this spectacle must be just staggering. Let's use a concrete example. The show's first ever visit to Maine back in June 2025. That was at the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens in Boothbay Harbor.
Right. You really have to picture the scene. 3,000 people. 3,000 converged on those beautiful gardens.
Just for one day.
For the event, yeah?
Oh.
That needs a huge production team, dozens of trucks, enough infrastructure to basically run a small town temporarily. And every single one of those 3,000 attendees was carrying a piece of their life,
Yeah.
A forgotten trunk from the attic, maybe, a painting hidden behind a sofa for years, or sometimes just the simple hope of finding an unexpected treasure.
It's that universal dream, isn't it? The dream of discovery. That's the core hook. I love that specific story you mentioned about Daniel and JC from Topsham.
Oh, yeah.
They waited in line with this item, a Bacon Belmont clawhammer banjo. They thought it was from the 1940s.
Yeah.
Just hoping, Ainsworth could confirm his history and maybe give them a number.
Exactly. That shared moment of anticipation, that possibility that the ordinary thing you've had forever is actually extraordinary, that's what binds every single viewer to the show, I think.
It creates this sense of shared possibility, yeah. But for the production team, all that possibility must create a logistical nightmare that needs to be managed, perfectly.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge challenge.
Okay, so let's unpack the nuts and bolts. How do 3,000 people and, 3 zillion items get processed in a single intense day? It sounds like total chaos.
It looks like chaos. But you're right, it's actually a highly refined triage system, almost like a massive conveyor belt for heirlooms.
Military-grade logistics, you said.
Pretty much, yeah. When attendees first arrive, they get directed to this initial triage area. It's often in the visitor center. And there, they wait to meet one of about 8 general appraisers.
Okay, so these aren't necessarily the big names you see on TV.
Not usually at this first stage, no. They're the expert gatekeepers. Their job is speed and assessment.
So you bring your box or your painting or whatever, then give it a quick look, ask a few initial questions.
Right.
And if the item looks like it might warrant a deeper dive, if it seems potentially good, old, or historically interesting, they route you onward.
Correct. The goal of those first 8 appraisers is really rapid assessment and efficient funneling. They're steering visitors towards the more specialized appraisal zones.
Gotcha.
At that main event, for instance, they had 5 dedicated appraisal areas set up, hosting 65 top expert appraisers, each ready to delve deep into specific categories. Fine art, jewelry, militaria, decorative arts, furniture, the whole range.
Wow, 65 experts. I just can't imagine the mental energy that requires. They have to make these lightning-fast judgments on objects that could be worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars or maybe absolutely nothing. How do they handle that pressure?
It demands incredible, almost instinctual, rapid assessment skills, decades of experience packed into moments. David Walker, he's a decorative arts and silver specialist, he once remarked it takes him maybe 2 or 3 seconds to know whether something's really good.
2 or 3 seconds.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
Now, that's not just a guess, obviously. That's decades of pattern recognition firing off, spotting the specific hallmarks, the patina, the quality of carving, the feel, the weight of the silver. You can make an immediate general assessment very, very quickly.
But wait, if he's that fast, how often does that initial gut feeling maybe lead to a mistake?
Yeah.
Or confirmation bias?
Yeah.
What if they dismiss something amazing because they're just trying to move through the lines too quickly?
Well, that's the tension of the day, isn't it? The experts have to trust their initial instinct, that gut feeling, but they also have to be prepared for that instinct to be, well, wrong. Sometimes the initial excitement, like seeing a beautiful piece of porcelain, it just starts to unravel, as Walker put it, the moment they look closer. They might spot hairline cracks or major restoration work or other condition issues.
Its condition is everything, right?
Yeah. Condition is paramount in the antique world. One small flaw, even a hidden one, can drop the value by 50, even 80% immediately. But they have to operate at that speed because they know there are literally thousands of other items still waiting behind that person.
And what's truly fascinating to me is the scarcity. The sheer scarcity of items that actually make it onto the air. They process thousands of hopeful people during one event.
Thousands.
Yet the vast majority leave without ever seeing a camera crew.
That's absolutely right. Out of those thousands, we're talking maybe 30 items total, give or take, that will eventually make it into the 3-hour-long episodes produced from that specific location.
Just 30.
About that. And those episodes usually don't air until the following year, starting in January, typically. So the chances of getting your item on air are incredibly slim, maybe 1 in 100, perhaps even less.
Wow.
Yet that tiny possibility, that glimmer of hope, it doesn't deter the massive crowds. And that is the real magic of the show, I think.
Definitely. Now that we understand the process a bit better, let's get a peek behind the curtain. What actually excites these experts? The people whose eyes have seen literally everything. Are there any expert secrets for spotting a potential treasure right away?
Well, one jewelry expert, Joanna Hardy, she shared a fantastic little secret that really speaks to the history these objects carry. She revealed that appraisers, especially jewelry ones, love seeing a leather box that has a bit of age to it and has some decoration.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. The box itself is a clue, right? To the provenance, maybe the quality of the item inside. It suggests the original owner cared enough to get custom packaging made.
Precisely. It sort of sets the stage for discovery. But the real moment of physical excitement for an appraiser, she said, is often purely tactile. It's about holding the item and feeling its weight.
Ah, the heft.
Exactly. If she held something like a piece of silver or a bracelet and immediately thought, whoa, this is heavy, that instantly creates excitement. That heaviness suggests high-quality materials, solid construction, maybe a density you just wouldn't find in modern, lighter, or inferior pieces.
Interesting. So next time you're at an estate sale, you're not just looking at the object, you're looking for the heavy, maybe slightly decorated old leather box it came in. And then you pick it up.
Pick it up, feel the weight. It's a great little operational secret to keep in mind.
Okay, now we need to transition from the logistics and secrets of appraisal to the economics of history. Because this is where the show gets really complicated, I think. The values given on air are, well, they're far from static, aren't they? They're highly volatile, fluid, and super dependent on complex market forces.
Yes, that is probably the most crucial takeaway for anyone watching the show or for you listening right now. The valuations you hear are always explicitly described as verbal approximations of value.
Approximations, not gospel.
Exactly. They are expert opinions based on specialized knowledge, absolutely, but they are not legally binding appraisals. The final actual value is a fluid number. It depends not just on condition, but on current market trends, collector tastes, and even the exact setting of the potential sale. Where you sell it matters hugely.
And we hear the terminology constantly on the show. Retail value versus auction value versus insurance or replacement value. We need to be really clear for the listener about the difference. Why are these numbers so often quite divergent?
Okay, let's break it down simply. Retail value is basically what a commercial dealer or a gallery would likely sell the item for. That price includes their overhead costs, their expertise, their time finding it, and, of course, their profit margin.
Right, the sticker price in a shop.
Pretty much. Now, insurance or replacement value is generally about the same as retail, sometimes maybe slightly higher, because it represents what it would cost you to go out and immediately replace that specific item with an identical or very similar one if it were lost or damaged.
Okay, so those two are kind of linked. They reflect the cost of acquiring the item without, say, the pressure of a quick sale.
Exactly. But the auction price, or the auction estimate, that's the wild card. The auction estimate can often be dramatically lower, sometimes even half the retail value or less.
Half. Why so much lower?
Well, it's due to a few factors. There's the immediacy of the sale, it has to sell on that day. There are the seller's commission fees, which can be substantial, taking a chunk out. And there's the buyer's inherent risk. They often can't examine the item as thoroughly as a dealer might over time. Essentially, the auction estimate reflects the potential cash-in-hand value on a specific day, which is almost always lower than the calculated retail market price.
Right.
The context of the sale is absolutely everything.
Okay, that clarifies it a lot. And to really see this intense volatility in action, we absolutely have to talk about one of the most famous items ever featured on the show, the massive Tang Dynasty horse. This ceramic figure traveled literally from ancient China right onto the set, and then it rode this massive market roller coaster.
Oh, it's the perfect and maybe the most painful case study of market risk and fluctuation you could find. The horse dates back to the Tang Dynasty, which spanned roughly the 6th to the 9th century in China. These were ceramic burial objects known as minqi. That literally translates to something like spirit utensils.
Spirit utensils. So they weren't for everyday use. They were specifically designed to go into the tomb to accompany the deceased into the afterlife.
Precisely. They were meant to represent the status, the wealth, the livelihood, everything the person wanted to have with them in their next life. Horses were particularly popular symbols for the wealthy elite because they signified military power, trade connections, luxury travel, all that.
And the composition of the horse itself is historically fascinating, too. It was made using that technique known as santai, right? The three-color pottery.
Yes, that three-color glaze is very distinctive. The colors, usually green, amber, or yellowish-brown, and sometimes blue, they get their vibrant hues from different metal oxides that were applied before firing. Copper oxide gave the greenish color, iron oxide made the amber tones.
And the blue.
Ugh. The vivid blue highlights came from cobalt oxide. Cobalt was particularly significant because in that Tang era, it was an exotic import. It often traveled all the way along the Silk Road from Persia or beyond. So the material history itself tells a story of vast global trade networks even back then.
Incredible. Now, let's talk about the unbelievable journey of this specific horse. It was huge, right? Like 2.5 feet.
Massive, yes. And the story of its acquisition back in the 1950s is just the stuff of legend, pure roadshow gold.
Okay, tell us.
The owner's father, he was an Air Force pilot stationed in Tokyo in 1950. He saw this towering fire in a shop and just fell in love with it. But it was so expensive he couldn't afford it outright, so he bought it on an installment plan.
An installment plan for an ancient artifact.
Get this. He paid for it in 7 separate installment visits. Each time, he handed over a few cartons of American cigarettes.
Cigarettes, seriously.
Seriously. Plus a final cash payoff later. Cigarettes were basically like currency in post-war Tokyo, valued almost like gold.
Paying for a piece of ancient Chinese art with, like, Lucky Strikes from the 1950s. That detail alone is priceless.
Isn't it? And then this large, heavy, fragile ceramic horse somehow survived constant family moves. They went from Seattle to California, then Maine, then Florida, often just bouncing around unsecured in the backseat of the family car during these long cross-country drives.
Oh, my God.
The fact that this, 1,500-year-old ceramic survived decades of just domestic relocation is honestly a miracle in itself.
No kidding. But the biggest question, surely, for any ancient Chinese ceramic is always authenticity. It's a market absolutely flooded with fakes, right?
Absolutely flooded. The appraiser Lark Mason, who's a top expert in Asian art, he was initially quite cautious because authentic Tang archaeological objects rarely surface without some kind of documented provenance or excavation record. So he advised the owner, Mike, to get a thermoluminescence test or TL test done, just to dispel any lingering uncertainty.
Okay, for those of us who don't know, can you explain briefly what that test does and why it's considered the gold standard for dating ceramics?
Sure. TL testing is essentially a scientific method for dating the last time the clay object was fired to a high temperature. See, clay naturally absorbs low levels of radiation from its environment over time. When you heat a small sample of that clay very rapidly in a lab, it releases that stored energy as light.
Ah.
By measuring the intensity of that light, scientists can determine how much radiation it absorbed and therefore calculate how long ago the piece was fired, essentially, when it was made. It's highly accurate for pottery. In the horse's case, they took tiny, discrete samples from the belly and under the chin.
Okay.
And the results came back confirming the clay was fired between 900 and 1500 years ago. Perfectly consistent with the Tang Dynasty period. It was the real deal.
That's amazing. But we know fakers are constantly getting smarter, always evolving to try and defeat tests like this. What sort of ingenuity are they employing now to deceive appraisers and buyers?
Oh, the ingenuity is honestly frightening sometimes. We've learned that some fakers attempt to defeat TL testing by doing things like inserting tiny slivers of genuinely ancient porcelain, maybe from a broken old vase, into newly made modern vases. They know that experts often try to take the sample from the base where it's less visible.
Wow, that's sneaky.
Very. But if the appraiser is diligent or the testing lab is thorough, they'll recommend sampling multiple points like they did with the horse. And in this case, thankfully, the horse was absolutely, unequivocally authentic.
Okay, now for the devastating part. The value roller coaster. Let's chart the dizzying series of valuations this authenticated ancient cigarette-bought horse went through over 2 decades on the show.
Right. So back in 1999, the initial insurance value was estimated at a whopping $100,000.
$100,000. Life-changing money.
Absolutely. Then, by 2007, when they revisited it, the market had softened a bit. The insurance value had dropped slightly to $80,000, with an auction estimate suggested around $30,000 to $50,000. Still a very, very strong return on 7 cartons of cigarettes.
It's still amazing. But then the market specifically for Tang burial wares, the Minky, it really kind of collapsed, didn't it? Why such a sharp and rapid decline after 2007?
It was driven by massive and sort of concurrent cultural and demographic shifts in collecting tastes. By 2018, the value is estimated lower than ever before, maybe around $25,000 retail.
Ouch.
Yeah. There were 2 primary forces at play, really. First, the new generation of wealthy Chinese collectors who became major players in the global art market began focusing heavily on artifacts representing imperial power, prestige, and high court art things like imperial porcelains, ancient ritual bronzes. Not so much these more common burial figures. It was a shift toward national pride and state history, away from burial goods.
Okay, that makes sense. And the second force, the Western market changed its mind too.
Exactly. The Western market, particularly in the US and Europe, shifted stylistically. Tastes moved towards a much less restrictive, more informal, often minimalist lifestyle and interior design aesthetic. These huge, formal ceramic figures that require significant display space and a certain kind of decor just didn't fit into modern homes the way they might have 30 years ago.
Right. Less demand from both sides.
Exactly. When the primary collector bases on both sides of the world shift away simultaneously, the value just plummets.
So fast forward to today, 2024. Where does this poor, majestic horse stand now in terms of value?
Well, the current auction estimate is even lower, sadly, probably in the $10,000 to $20,000 range. That is a really brutal decline from that initial $100,000 peak.
Devastating for the owner.
It was. However, it's important to note the insurance value remains more stable and significantly higher, maybe around $30,000 to $50,000, which again highlights that critical difference between replacement cost and immediate selling power in a shifting market.
But there's one factor you mentioned that makes this horse almost priceless in a different way, particularly for museums and institutions. Its provenance.
Yes, this is its ultimate saving grace, especially from an institutional perspective. Because Mike's father purchased the horse way back in 1950, it significantly predates the 1970 UNESCO Convention.
Ah, the key date.
That's the key date. That convention governs the international trade of cultural property, aiming to prevent the looting and illegal smuggling of artifacts. For any ethical museum or major collector today, tracing legitimate ownership back to at least 1970 is absolutely crucial.
So because they have definitive proof of purchase, those cigarette receipts, metaphorically speaking, dating all the way back to 1950, this horse's provenance, its documented history of ownership, is essentially perfect. It satisfies all international regulations.
It's an 11 out of 10, as you might say, for provenance.
Really?
Bulletproof. But the final, and I think the most profound note on this horse is the owner's reaction. Despite Mike's understandable shock and, frankly, depression at watching the value decline so dramatically over the years, he decided to keep it. He recognized it as an irreplaceable family fixture, a connection to his father, and he believed that if it were ever sold, it truly belonged in a museum, not just flipped for cash. That story just perfectly encapsulates why the show exists beyond the dollar signs.
That sentimental outcome, that choice to keep it despite the money, it seems to happen so often. We saw a similar dynamic play out with that stunning Italian bracelet you mentioned earlier, where the expert almost actively discouraged the owner from selling.
That's right. Joanna Hardy, again, the jewelry expert. She was shown this really exquisite 18-karat gold bracelet. What stood out immediately was its seamless design and just superb craftsmanship. The hallmarks showed it was made in Italy and then imported, but critically, it was retailed by Gerard & Co.
Gerards, the crown jewelers. Wow.
Exactly, the Queen's jewelers.
Yeah.
So you've got this combination of high gold quality, exceptional Italian manufacturing, and this incredibly prestigious retailer remark. That's a home run in the jewelry world.
So the value was high?
Oh, yes. It was estimated between £8,000 and £10,000 at auction, a significant amount. But when the guest mentioned that he intended for his daughter to inherit the bracelet eventually,
Yeah.
Joanna Hardy looked directly at him very sincerely and just told him, don't sell it, enjoy it. She explicitly validated that feeling that while the market price is high, the value of the heirloom, the intention of passing it down through the family, was actually greater.
That's lovely. And this idea transitions us perfectly into our next segment because the items that make it onto the show, they really are invaluable time capsules, aren't they? Documenting history, culture, and sometimes really profound tragedy.
Yes, absolutely. And the story of Carolyn's family heirlooms rescued from the Holocaust is genuinely one of the most sobering and important moments the show has ever documented. Her grandfather, he was a Supreme Court judge in Berlin, but he was forcibly retired as the Nazis took power in the 1930s.
And he had this incredible, almost heartbreaking foresight to realize that his life and his family's entire physical history were in grave danger.
He did. He took the extraordinary step under immense pressure of creating this meticulous family history book. He detailed all their cherished possessions, artwork, photographs, clocks, furniture, and wrote down the exact stories behind them, documenting the entire scope of their prosperous, cultured life before it was destroyed.
Wow.
And then he gave this precious book to his 14-year-old son just before the boy was put on a boat to leave Germany forever, ensuring the family history, the memory would survive, even if the family itself did not remain whole. The boy never saw his parents again.
Oh, that's devastating. And this act of documentation happened right before the Nazis issued that decree for the reporting of Jewish-owned property in April 1938, didn't it?
Exactly. That decree legally required all Jews in Germany to report and evaluate all their property, making it immediately subject to confiscation by the state. It was legalized theft on a massive scale.
And that confiscation was often brutal and arbitrary.
Oh, absolutely. Carolyn shared the family story that Hermann Goering himself, one of the highest-ranking Nazis, allegedly came to their house and effectively bought things, a transaction, of course, the family was never actually paid for. The few items that survived, like a beautiful circa 1875 solid gold Demi-Hunter pocket watch with a hand-engraved portrait of the ancestor who originally gifted it, these are irreplaceable mementos.
Yeah.
They survive not just as valuable treasures, but as physical evidence of a life that was lost and a devastating historical tragedy.
And these objects, crucially because of that accompanying documentation in the book, they serve as historical proof. Proof of a vibrant Jewish community and culture that existed before it was systematically destroyed. Powerful stuff.
Oh, incredibly powerful. Now, moving to objects defined more by celebrity and rarity, we see how history gets captured in much more modern forms as well. We had some truly fascinating high-value finds in this category that really caught people's attention.
Absolutely. The discovery of Marvin Gaye's 1964 passport is still one of my all-time favorite accidental roadshow finds. It was discovered just tucked inside an old vinyl record, bought at an estate sale for, like, 50 cents.
Incredible luck. And the date, 1964, is so crucial. That's the exact year he famously added the E to his last name, transitioning professionally from Marvin Gaye to Marvin Gaye.
Right, a pivotal year.
Absolutely. And the stamps inside that passport, they precisely track his early world tours just as he was exploding onto the global Motown scene and becoming a superstar.
And official documents like passports belonging to figures of that kind of celebrity status, they're notoriously rare, aren't they? They usually end up being destroyed or locked away in archives somewhere.
Correct. Most get canceled or just disappear. The fact that this specific document survived, essentially lost and forgotten inside a record sleeve for decades, is just incredible. That passport, providing a literal timeline of his rise to fame, was valued for insurance purposes at over $20,000. A fantastic accident of history.
Amazing. And then, on the Hollywood royalty front, we got a glimpse of pure cinematic glamour with that Marilyn Monroe dress.
We certainly did. A dress worn by Marilyn Monroe in the classic film Some Like It Hot Surfaced. It was created by the Oscar-winning costume designer Ori Kelly.
A legend himself.
Indeed. Who famously often had to literally sew Monroe directly into her costumes because of her extremely small figure. This specific black beaded dress, complete with fringe, from the film. It was given a strong, maybe even conservative auction estimate of $150,000 to $250,000.
$250,000 potentially.
Potentially, yes. It's a true artifact of cinematic history, Hollywood glamour, and fashion design all rolled into one.
Beyond celebrity, though, sometimes the hidden value lies entirely in design history and maybe unrecognized modernist craftsmanship, which is exactly the case with those Harry Bertoia brooches, wasn't it?
Yes, this is a perfect example of a potential masterpiece hiding in plain sight. The guest brought in these two simple, small, handmade brooches, nothing flashy. She'd received them when she was just 16 years old because her sister worked at the Cranbrook Academy dorms where Harry Bertoia was staying back in the late 1930s.
So at the time, they were just charming little handmade gifts from an artist staying there.
Exactly. But what the appraiser immediately recognized was that these weren't just any little trinkets. They were very early experimental modernist jewelry pieces created before Bertoia became the globally recognized master sculptor, famous for his diamond chairs and those amazing abstract sound sculptures.
Yeah, so they showed his early development.
Precisely. They exhibited these incredible, intricate early forging techniques, tension fittings, tiny rivets, pure abstract forms, all reflecting that pure, unadulterated, modernist aesthetic he was developing at Cranbrook. Their original handmade quality, the materials used, and especially their early date, makes them tremendously collectible to design historians and museums.
What was the value?
The auction estimate for the pair came in at an astonishing $40,000 to $60,000.
$40,000 to $60,000.
Yeah.
For two small brooches.
Yep. It just proves you don't need gold or diamonds for immense value in the art world. Sometimes you just need genius. Documented early.
Incredible. And finally, in this section, we saw the immense enduring value locked within fine art prints, specifically that collection of Rembrandt etchings that had been passed down from a collector father.
Right, two etchings were presented. One was a truly remarkable self-portrait dated 1630, created when Rembrandt was only 24 years old.
So young.
Incredibly young, already a master. Now, despite some condition issues, some age-related spotting on the paper, its rarity and historical significance as an early self-portrait were immense. That drove the auction estimate up to $40,000 to $60,000.
Wow. And the second print?
The second, a print titled Christ at Emmaus from 1634, was identified by the expert as an early fine impression, meaning it was printed while the plate was still fresh and sharp. That one was valued more modestly, but still significantly, at $10,000 to $15,000.
So two small pieces of paper, inherited almost casually, potentially worth over $50,000, maybe even up to $75,000 in total valuation.
Exactly. It's a powerful illustration of how even the smallest objects can hold the greatest cultural weight, connecting us directly across centuries to the technical genius of the past.
Okay, we've established that the job of the appraiser is incredibly complex. They have to synthesize history, market trends, craftsmanship, human emotion, all into a single number, often under intense time pressure.
It's a unique skill set, definitely.
Which is why, as we move into our final area of discussion today, it feels crucial to turn our attention to the human cost of that expertise. The lives of the appraisers and the presenters who bring these stories to our screens are often much more complex and, frankly, sometimes tragic than the polished television segments might reveal.
Yes, this is the somber but I think deeply important side of the Antiques Roadshow legacy. For a show that's been running for, 4 decades now in the UK version and nearly 3 in the US, the community involved is incredibly tight-knit, and they have endured significant personal loss and profound battles behind the scenes. It creates this shared sense of professional dedication, but also shared grief.
We've certainly lost several foundational figures over the years, people who really shaped the public perception of the show. Hugh Scully, for instance, the longtime presenter of the UK show from 1981 to 2000. He passed away back in 2015.
Yeah, he was associated with the show's core identity for 2 whole decades. His death was a really profound loss felt throughout that community.
And of course, the great Henry Sandon, the absolute giant of pottery and porcelain expertise. He joined the UK show way back in 1979 and had a 40-year career on screen.
40 years. He was known for his incredibly animated, passionate, knowledgeable descriptions. His son affectionately described him, I remember, as everyone's favorite uncle. Henry passed just recently, in 2021, at the grand age of 95. A huge loss.
And even more recently, we lost Judith Miller in April 2023. She was such an integral figure, known globally for her encyclopedic knowledge, especially in decorative arts, antiques guides, and just her incredibly warm demeanor that made complex topics feel accessible and exciting.
She really had a gift for that. And the tragedies have extended to untimely, truly shocking losses as well. David Barbie, known for his charismatic presence in the fine arts world on the U.S. show, suffered a stroke and passed away shortly after in 2012.
So young.
Very young. And in the very same year, 2012, Alice Gibson Watt, a highly admired fine art expert on the UK show, died tragically due to complications following childbirth. These kinds of events, back-to-back almost, they profoundly affect a close-knit production family like that.
Oh, absolutely. It truly reminds you of the immense fragility of life, especially when you're working on a production focused on durable, ancient objects that last centuries. We should also remember Michael Baggett, known for his expertise in collectibles, who passed suddenly from a heart attack, and Nikki Illis, a creative director vital to shaping the visual stories, whose life was tragically cut short at a young age.
Yeah, these losses resonate deeply within the team. But beyond loss, there are also just tremendous stories of resilience and advocacy among the experts who are currently on screen facing their own challenges.
Right.
Take Theo Burrell, for instance, a decorative arts specialist on the UK show. She was diagnosed at the devastatingly young age of 35 with terminal grade 4 glioblastoma, a very aggressive brain cancer.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and that diagnosis came with a brutal prognosis, typically 12 to 18 months.
But instead of retreating from the public eye, she chose to share her journey publicly, didn't she?
She did. She became this fierce advocate for brain tumor research, raising awareness, and incredibly continued to contribute her expertise to the show, sharing her passion despite her ongoing battle. That strength and determination to keep working and advocating under such a prognosis is, frankly, just inspiring.
Truly inspiring. We also look to someone like Eric Knowles on the UK show, known for his sharp wit and trademark humor. Eric faced the unimaginable personal tragedy of his son dying suddenly in a car accident in 2015.
Just devastating.
Utterly. Despite that immense personal devastation, he continued his work, relying on the support of his colleagues and the audience, demonstrating just immense resilience in the face of overwhelming grief. And many other highly familiar experts have faced their own serious health challenges and accidents over the years, proving that the work somehow continues despite immense personal struggle. It shows a community really committed to their calling.
Definitely. Hillary Kay, for example, suffered a serious accident in 2015 that temporarily sidelined her, but she returned with that same unwavering commitment. Paul Atterbury has bravely battled significant private health issues, which were compounded by the death of his mother, yet he continues to persevere in his field of ceramics.
And specialists like Clive Farrar, known for books and manuscripts, have had their participation temporarily affected by serious illness. Mark Smith, the military memorabilia expert, was also sidelined for a time by a serious injury. Their dedication to return to the show, to continue sharing their knowledge with viewers, despite these massive physical and emotional setbacks, it really speaks volumes about their passion for history and their commitment.
It really does. And you know, even when things go slightly wrong on air, it serves as a powerful momentary reminder that they are, after all, just human. Think of Mark Allam's on-air accident in 2023 on the UK show.
Oh, I remember that. He was examining that incredibly complex 48-piece penknife.
Exactly, during the broadcast, and he accidentally cut his finger quite badly on one of the blades.
The camera zoomed right in, production had to briefly halt, there was blood, and for a moment, that distance between the polished, perfect show and the messy real world of accidents just disappeared.
It did. It confirms that even the most seasoned, knowledgeable professionals can be momentarily vulnerable. Their ability to synthesize complex history, volatile market trends, raw human emotion, all while sometimes privately facing tremendous turmoil, both collective grief and personal struggles, it makes their work on screen all the more remarkable, I think.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, the central theme that emerges, really time and time again, is the eternal value of the object, and how it rarely correlates perfectly with that final financial appraisal number.
Exactly. Whether we're talking about the Tang horse that survived decades of rough road trips and devastating market crashes, Or the Italian gold bracelet that the expert advised the owner, no, keep it for your daughter to enjoy. Or those deeply moving Nazi-confiscated heirlooms that survived as tangible proof of a family's very existence. The non-monetary, the emotional, the historical value almost always outweighs the financial estimate in the end.
It feels like the appraisal number is often just a validation, maybe, of the priceless story they already knew they held. The goal for most guests isn't really selling, is it? It's about treasuring the object, understanding it, and securing its history for the next generation.
Beautifully put. And that profound human drive to secure history, to pass things on, it leads us right back to the very origins of many of these ancient items we've discussed. Reflect again on that ancient concept of the Tang Dynasty burial objects, the Mingyi.
Right, the spear utensils.
People were literally buried with ceramic representations of all the things they cherished and wanted to accompany them into the afterlife, their status, their wealth, symbols of their life.
And you mentioned Marcia Bemko, the executive producer. When she was asked what she would take into her afterlife, she jokingly said she wanted to bring her living family.
Right. Noting that her truly valuable things in life are relationships, not objects.
Yeah.
And that profound human connection, that's really the essence we want to leave you, the listener, with today. If you knew, somehow, that one object would accompany you into the next life, symbolizing the most valuable thing you currently possess, whether that's an intangible relationship, a specific cherished memory, or a deeply held belief, what modern artifact would you create today to hold that meaning for eternity?
What object encapsulates the most enduring, precious part of your own life right now?
Fascinating thought to ponder.
It really is. Ponder that thought. We've been immersed in these incredible stories of history, value, and human connection, and we truly hope you found your own priceless nugget of knowledge or reflection in this deep dive today.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.